Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Soul Brothers. Today we have a very special guest. I've been waiting not just a few weeks, it's been a few months to schedule this interview. And this is going to be very, very exciting because we're going to be talking all about ZK infrastructure that allows every app, every wallet, every transaction on Solana to be able to think with privacy at Solana speed. But before we spoil with those details, I hope you guys are having a absolutely wonderful day. I am over in the ancient city of Constantinople, which is now known as Istanbul in Turkey. If you happen to be in Turkey, by the way, would love to get lunch or maybe even a tea with you. So just let me know in the DMs. But without further ado, I would like to bring to the stage the founder of Darklake. And so we're going to bring on Vitor. What's good, brother? How are you?
Thank you. Nice to be with you again. Yeah.
Yeah, tutto bem.
Thank you. Yeah, tudo bem.
So if I'm not mistaken, actually you're from Brazil. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm from Rio. Yeah.
Oh, okay, you're from Rio. I have a friend. He's from Recife, which is that seaside
yeah.
town. Yeah, more towards the north.
Place.
Beautiful, beautiful place. Have you ever been?
Yeah.
Yeah. But now, as I understand it, you're actually over in Europe, and don't need you to tell the exact location, but just kind of curious.
No, I'm very public. I'm in Poland. Yeah, I'm in Palestine, which is yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I was reading a little bit on your background, and you have a really fascinating backstory. You actually started, it seems, with material sciences, and then along the way, created a wallet that had gotten a little bit of traction, Pillar, over on Ethereum. And from what I can see on your own personal writings, you still make time to tinker on maybe some side projects. For example, being able to see like a bunch of different works of art, but not in Chrome, but like just as a desktop wallpaper background. So it's very clear to me that you're a creator, you're a builder, you're someone who likes to get their hands dirty with all kinds of projects. It's not just the ZK side. It's truly like you love to make things, right? So would love for you to give a little bit more of an overview of kind of who you are as a person and like why do you love to build so much?
to be honest, I'm just one more of the nerdy kids. Someone put a computer in front of me when I was 7. They taught me how to code, and I've been doing it ever since. And I did went to school to be a material scientist, and I ended up somehow in a random internship with the government institute that makes satellites in Brazil, and I started writing software for material scientists, and I've been writing software ever since someone I could realize I could be paid to do that. And yeah, out of college, I had a small startup. We used to take thin slices out of like engine blocks and calculate some properties. Yeah, put on the microscope, calculate some properties. And it was really cool. I had one client that was Fiat. I only had one client, that's why it no longer exists. And end up working for bunch of big tech companies, did a stint at founded Pillar in the 2017, first big bull run. At time in London, Pillar was essentially a Ethereum wallet, which was probably one of the earliest like smart wallets, and nowadays an account abstraction toolkit called EtherSpot. But yeah, we had some very good traction during roughly around the pandemic. Someone invited me to join Meta, and I was I was super excited because they invited me to go to the AI part of the world again and build hardware. Actually, I was in a project called Grand Teton, building the big machines for training LLM models. And I hated it, and I was very, very bored. Yeah, because it's big tech, and you're coming from crypto. You're used to crypto. You got this all craziness. You can tell someone, "Hey, let's change the world. Let's invent a new financial ecosystem," and people take you seriously. And then you're working for big tech. You're doing very small things. It's very hard to convince anyone to do anything. I was like, "Oh no, I can't do that." And I was dating a Polish girl at the time, so I moved to Poland and bumped into Solana and found the Darklake.
I see. Well, it's really interesting to see your switch from material sciences over to crypto because, well, I mean, could you let people know what exactly material sciences is? Like, I think there's some people in the audience that might not even understand like what that field of study is all about.
Oh, material science is actually a very, large field. It can go from the people who deal with like iron and smelting and to make steel,
Hmm.
all the way to people that do quantum for nanotechnologies. Um, in the way, if you take something like a piece of metal, it has a small structure inside. It looks like small crystals, one touching each other. And the way these crystals are touching or shaped influences how the material behaves, how strong it
Mm.
is, how ductile it is. So we studied this small structure. And most of people this become industrial, but for me this always what I did from the beginning was take computers and try to analyze how these structures look. So for
Mm.
me, moving into computer science was eventually very natural. I ended up getting a degree in computer science lately. So yeah, it's a field of view. It was for me it was very natural transition.
I see, I see. Because you were already working more on the software side, analyzing these particles on a, I want to say molecular level, but maybe it's even deeper than that. It's not
Oh,
my
it can be
forte.
atomic, yeah. If you look at the yeah.
Yeah. But then that naturally, obviously, if you're a software engineer, then at some point, I'm sure you're going to run into the blockchain, right? And what you can build on there. But it sounds like what you really care about is impact, right? Because I mean, nothing's worse than when you have this, what you feel is like a very crazy, interesting idea, and then just like the people around you kind of suck all the energy out of the room and say like, like you can't really do it. But with crypto, it seems like you really found a home, right? So like, what really
Yeah.
attracted you to this community?
To be honest, for me, yeah, crypto I think it has it has a different energy in the terms of like you can be extremely, I don't know, audacious and say, hey, let's I got a friend that's building, putting satellites in space right now, and all based on a crypto project, and you can be audacious and build things and people believe you. And
Hmm.
I think this energy is quite unmatched. Maybe parts of the AI space have this now, but I think during Web 2, this really didn't exist anywhere but crypto.
Hmm. I'm really struck by your writing because it seems to me that you're not very money motivated. It seems like you're much more motivated by principles of fairness, transparency, collaboration with other like-minded individuals. Like, what has informed this psychology? Like, why do you operate in this way, right? Like, it seems like you have a very specific, opinionated worldview. Like, where does that all come from?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, to be honest, there is a weird branch of pedagogy of teaching kids how to behave called pedagogy. I went to a different school which teaches essentially how to kids allowed to self-organize and eventually we used to pick around homework and things like that. And I used to love that. I still do. And for me, it was a very interesting experience, but it also became very hard to believe in traditional structures. I don't get along very well. And so I kind of like the idea of being able, in crypto, you build these small, almost villages of like-minded people that are just building things together because it's cool. And
Mhm.
yeah, make money is nice, but quite frankly, at some point, it's a number and it goes up, goes down, and if your happiness depends on that, you're gonna be very stressed in your life.
So then, like, out of all the potential things that you could have worked on, right? Like, I mean, obviously, there's an infinite amount of things that you could be working on, and it's very clear that you have a very wide set of interests. Why privacy? Why Darklake? Why ZK? Could you explain some of the motivations behind that? And if you don't mind, I'm actually going to show this as well, which is the Darklake website. Think securely, connect freely. So yeah, just tell us a little bit more about like why Darklake? Why did you decide that you were going to work on this specifically?
There's a few reasons why I end up in Darklake. There's one very nerdy reasons that I like the underlying mathematics. I think it's beautiful and I can understand how it works. But there's also a fundamental practical aspect in the sense good markets are fair markets, and fair markets are markets where the information flows in a way that's essentially equitable to everyone. No one has access to information before anyone else. And one of the ideas for Darklake is that, well, some people have an informational advantage because they sit early in the process, RPC providers, validators. Can we use pure math to take a bit of this advantage away? And it works. It's become essentially a year-long research project. But
Mm,
I like the way it works. I like the way the
yeah.
fact when you think like, for example, things like BAM or the guys at Harmonic doing block building right now. These are all big pieces of infrastructure that need the validators to cooperate. And the idea for Dark Lake is like, can we do this very simply? Can we do this in a way that lets the user pick and it doesn't depend on any kind of special infrastructure?
Mm,
And I think it was a fun problem to solve, and it kind of feels the right way to go along. In the end, blockchains are great because they connect this, great interconnect between systems that Tolly calls a big state machine, and that give us prices and everything across the world. But at the same time, you don't want everything to be out in the open. If you're doing
mm,
something that looks like an auction, um,
mm,
you want your best possible price, for example, to be private. You don't want it to be out in the open, because otherwise, if anyone sees before everyone else, they can do this. In very classical cryptography, usually this is a problem that appears times and time again.
mm,
Usually solved by something like you commit to a value and then later you review. It's called commit and review scheme.
mhm,
But any scheme that takes essentially two steps, that's an interactive scheme on a blockchain, kind of feels weird for the user because there's one transaction
mm,
and then something happens. And
mm,
Darklake was like, can we have this type of privacy, but with no interactive scheme or just a single transaction with nothing
mm,
else? We restricted our options of like how to build very deeply, and
mm.
yeah, it was fun. Building difficult things are it's fun.
Well, I mean, so break it down in plain language for just your average Joe, right? Like, why should they care about Dark Lake? What does it actually mean for them? I totally hear you that this is a system that levels the playing field, especially when you're competing against the likes of people who get the order flow first, right?
Mhm.
But like, what would this mean for let's say your mom, right? If she were to like start investing on Solana or like holding RWAs or using stable coins? Like what would it mean for or even like a developer who's working on agentic commerce and is sending X402 requests or maybe there's a financial component. Paint us a picture.
Sure. No, yes. I think, for example, let's take one specific market, right? Because there's a difference between like the Dark Lake, the underlying technique, and the Dark Lake, the products. If you think about the product, for instance, if you think about perps, let's say you have a very big position in perps that's open somewhere. You have a known liquidation point that everyone can see because if everything's on chain, everyone can see which points of get liquidated. And then there's something called whale hunting. You can go and you can calculate how much you need to move the market to trigger a liquidation for that person. One of the instantiations of Darklake, one of the ways we implemented Darklake is to use the kind of proof that we have for doing markets where the notional values, like you can see the total position, but you cannot see how leveraged a person is. You cannot know where they are going to be liquidated. So we make whale hunting 1 million times more difficult because we have to guess where people are going to get liquidated or not.
Mm.
And this again levels the playing field in the sense people who can't move the market that much have more or less the same chances as the people who have enough capital to do big market swings and trigger liquidations. So the underlying technique is essentially this: it's like, can we take some pieces of information of a trade and make them confidential? And it is something that you need in practice for most of the trading products. You need it for perps. For the case of like spot trading, you need it against front running, because you don't want the front running is a very easy problem from when you feed. No, it's like to think of it in terms of like someone can see the worst possible price that you're willing to pay, and
Mm.
if they can reorder transactions, they'll make sure that you pay the worst possible price. And Dark
Mm.
Lake is the it's a very like almost simplistic way of thinking, like, can we hide the worst possible price? And the
Mm.
answer, yes, we can. And there's still ways for them to know, but it becomes way more difficult, and they only have a very small amount of time for doing this, which is the time of a block, or roughly the time of a block. So it makes their life more difficult.
Mhm.
So yeah, Dark Lake, the underlying mathematical construction allows us to build these essentially more level playing fields. And quite frankly, in the end, why level playing fields matter is not really a question of only being fair and equitable, which is nice, but we know from economic theory that efficient markets are equitable markets, and we know they produce better prices. And so they actually have a very having fair and efficient markets have a difference in how much money you're gonna make and how efficient that market is.
Yeah, I mean, especially in the case of perps, I think what makes a lot of sense is a, a market in which you know that the whales are going to actively hunt for your positions is not a market that many people want to participate in. But that's actually the current reality today, right?
Yes, it is.
Whereas,
Yeah.
um, and arguably, I heard someone. This is definitely not from me. I'm just parroting a point made by a much more intelligent friend. But perps are kind of what wiped out retail, at least for this cycle, right? And like if we were to look at the data, then it would suggest we're probably in like a retail Great Depression because perps just wipe you out to zero. It's just all wealth transfer, and so long term, we need to obfuscate like what exactly like you can go on TradingView and see like all the different positions that people have available. Like it's kind of nuts, right? It's like a
Yeah, it
single whale
is.
could be like because a whale could take they essentially keep their position, but all they're doing is they're manipulating the price in such a way that they can benefit from from all those
Yeah.
liquidation. It's not crime, but it feels like crime. It should be crime, but it's not a good thing.
Well, to be honest, a lot of the things where people say, well, it's crime comes from like the SEC trying to, or whatever government trying to solve these problems of having equitable markets, and kind of feel that, like, in at least my mind, in crypto, we decided, well, we're most of the time not really trying to go with like government regulations. We're trying to build better systems that give us better markets, and our idea is, let's keep on trying. Having fully transparent systems doesn't really work because you know it provides an advantage for the people who are able to take that information and manipulate the market. So let's
Mm,
take that information away from them. And I think we're very close for us at Darklake. For purposes, still trying to find the GTM partners to bring this, because we're a small company, we can't really
mm,
take on perps by ourselves. But we've been talking to other crypto exchanges and say, hey, can we make these small darkish pools that can provide investor protection? And they're gonna be there. We need to be profitable for retail, or we're not gonna be a trading venue people want to be.
Hmm. Right. Um, I'm wondering how you see the future of privacy as it pertains to agents, right? Are you playing around with agentic coding these days? Okay,
Yeah,
perfect. And obviously you're familiar with X402. We talked before this call. You clearly know what that is. Could you actually let people know like why X402 is so exciting, especially for like agents who are going out in the world and executing our commands?
yeah. I don't know if I can talk about export two specifically, but yeah,
I see. I see.
we've been deep in. For me, it's been crazy months, right? Because essentially 1 year ago, I couldn't really do advanced maths with agents, and ever since GPT 5.2, I can. And there is a bunch of essentially math specialized LLMs now, like Aristotle and Flia from Google and Harmonic, that are solving like classical problems in mathematics. So yeah, a lot of the Darklake protocol, a lot of the equivalent of an audit was
Hmm.
revealed by the advanced advanced agents, and it's just cool. It completely changed how you would build ZK or essentially build mathematical primitives in last
Right.
6 months of life.
Well, what does privacy look like in that context, right? Like I imagine it for whatever reason to be payments, which is what X402 is. Instead of having to open up a API, like have like an account and then get an API key, you could simply just call to the API, send a microtransaction of like stable coins, and like you get access to the data that way, right?
Mhm.
Do you think privacy would be important in this context? I actually I can't think that far ahead. So I have no idea what that might look like, but I thought maybe you might have some thoughts there.
So and the answer is complex, but yeah, let's break it down. So payments, they have essentially, if you think of, let's think of traditional payments. Let's think of you're going with your cards and paying and tapping on something. There are two things being exchanged there. There's an exchange of value, which is how much is being transferred, and there's also an exchange of information of who is paying for what and when. Um, we can in blockchain we often tend to break down the two of them. But in fact, is in the real world, as you move into away from pure financial transactions on a chain, on unregulated markets, to something that's more complex, you want to prove something. For example, let's say you want to search for data and you want to prove that a user has actually appropriate age to be receiving this data, or has an ID that belongs to a jurisdiction that has access to this data. And you can
Hmm.
do this you can transfer this information data in two ways. You can either do the classical way where people build accounts and send documents, but this won't translate to fully automated commerce. And one of the way that this translates in fully automated commerce is by proving identity through all ZK proofs, where you're essentially not sharing the data, but you're sharing a proof that says, hey, I can perform this action. The classical thing is like stocks. If you're trading stocks, um, either you're doing KYC with someone and someone has a big allow list somewhere that say, hey, this wallet can trade. Um, but you really don't want to allow lists everywhere, and you don't want to be KYCing everywhere. You much rather say, hey, I have this ZK proof that says I'm over 18 and that I possess an ID card from this jurisdiction, and I can prove that I have it, and it's been issued in the last 3 months. And so ZK proofs for identity are a fundamental part of commerce if we're going to move into automated commerce, in my view.
Mm. Right. Okay. I really appreciate that. And also just kind of looking at the general roadmap for Darklake. It seems like you have three products that are cooking, and please correct me if I'm wrong. You have the ZK AMM, you have PerpDex coming soon, and I think you're looking for a GTM partner there, and then something called Ziga, which I have not heard of before, actually. So would love to get a little bit more alpha. What is Ziga?
So Zika is the underlying tech behind the ZKMM and the perps.
Mm,
There is essentially, when you talk about ZK proofs, traditional ZK proofs, they if you think of them as little boxes, they have like inputs and outputs,
mm,
and you'll take a picture of this little box, and that's a ZK proof with a
mm,
certain inputs and certain outputs. And on traditional way that builds snarks or any kind of ZK proofs, the way these inputs and the picture, they have a strong correlation. You need to have to prove that this picture is real. You need to have the exact same inputs. This is fine for main use cases. This is not fine for other use cases. For example, when you have a proof that one of the inputs is, for example, a price, prices are changing constantly between the time where the user generates a proof and the time where the proof is verified. A price is likely to change. So that's one of the big reasons you don't see markets with ZK proofs.
mm.
So what we went, myself and a big friend of mine who's also a big nerd, bigger nerd than me, we went back into the maths that build ZK proofs and say, hey, can we build weird ZK proofs? Can we build ZK proofs where some of these inputs are something that we can change and check if they are available? We can see some other people doing this. So I believe this is the trend. These dynamic snarks or dynamic public inputs, as we call them, will be a thing for ZK. But yeah, I think we're like the first like practical implementation to hit the market. So yeah, this is how we
Are
power our tech.
are dynamic snarks more efficient in processing the transaction than you? Because you were mentioning that there's this kind of gap in between, the proving of the ZK proof, and there in that gap you can have price fluctuation. So like, how does like a dynamic snark address that?
So a dynamic snark essentially allows us to ask. So when you have a traditional snark, you can take a snark and ask one question: is this snark
Mm,
valid? And
mm,
with dynamic snarks, you can say, hey, is this snark valid with this price or with this range? And
mm,
so it allows for some degree of fluctuation on an input. And this is a different question that traditional snarks answer. The traditional way to do this is to use something like Archium or Zama, where you're
mm,
essentially using an external system to the blockchain, like a series of Archium nodes or Zama nodes. And this introduces latency. And we know that markets, they thrive when they are low latency. They want to be, information want to flow as fast as possible.
yes.
So we essentially, Ziga may not provide all the possibilities of computation that a system like Arc or Zama can, but it provides enough to provide, essentially solve most of the practical financial problems, and doesn't require this external nodes or this external processing
Mm,
network. And so it ends up working with a much lower latency than an external system like this. And for the
mm,
case of snarks, for the comparison with classical, we're essentially like the first version of Darklake that went to the Colosseum radar. You essentially could do one transaction per block, because essentially you could do one transaction and the price will change. So the next guy can come, next guy can come. So traditional snarks don't really cut it for most of the financial applications, other than doing things that are static, like, for example, I don't know, Tornado Cash, where you're doing deposits. Deposits, they
mm,
are static.
mm. So then what's the long-term bull case for Darklake? Do you imagine it being integrated into all of the DeFi protocols so that their users have privacy? Like, what's the model? How do you charge? Like, why should people be bullish on Darklake?
To be honest, yeah, this is we believe that some degree of privacy will become fundamental part of every single DeFi
Hmm.
protocol in the long term. That's essentially, in many ways, is mimics the TradFi. Uh, in a way, right now we're fully open markets and they're good and we have benefits, but we also need some degree of privacy. I believe Darklake is the right way to do this privacy in the sense it's low latency, is cheap on compute, and it solves all the practical cases that we need to solve.
Hmm.
And we're very bullish on bringing this stack to market. And yeah, I think with Perps, we're going to be out there soon.
Well, we wish you best luck, and of course, if I can be helpful in any way in trying
Oh,
to integrate with more perp dexes, please do let me know.
yeah.
But that is going to wrap up our interview with Vitor today. I really appreciate
Thank you.
all the alpha that you shared about like why Darklake is different from existing solutions, as well as like I just learned more about ZK today, so that's it's always a win when you learn something new.
Cool.
So W's in the chat. Thank you very much, Vitor. Do you have anything that you want to shill or any call to action, something you want to talk about?
To be honest, yeah, I've been in deep builder mode lately, and yeah, we're gonna announce the next steps for perps very soon. So yeah, please follow Darklake, and yeah, we'll be there soon.
Follow Darklake, and if you're
Follow
interested in
Darklake,
not
yeah.
getting your positions hunted by whales, then you'll definitely want to use their stack. So Vitor, again, thank you very much for your
Thank
time,
you.
and we'll see you on the next one, everyone. Adios.
Bye bye.